All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. We will go ahead and begin. Hello and welcome. My name is James Martinez. I'm the Assistant Director for the MBA program here at the University of Houston downtown in the Maryland Davies College of Business. And we are excited to welcome all of you here today for today's presentation on, this is being hosted, I should say, by our leadership series here at the Maryland Davies College of Business. And today's session is on artificial intelligence in modern business. And I will go ahead and turn it directly over to the dean of the college. His name is Dr. Jonathan Davis, and also our guest, Dr. Sanjoy Paul. Dean Davis, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you, James. So, apologies, we had some audio problems. So were you able to do an introduction of Dr. Paul yet?
No, I did not.
Okay, well, let me go ahead and transition to our interview questions. I want to first of all thank Dr. Sanjoy Paul for being here from the Rice Nexus and the Houston Ion to be here to talk to us a little bit about artificial intelligence and the ways in which that it's impacting our world and the future of business and the way that we interact with our careers. As a first step, can you give us maybe the 30-second introduction to yourself and how you started in AI?
I'm basically an electrical and telecommunications engineer by training. So I did my bachelor's and then I came to the US to do my master's and PhD at University of Maryland, College Park. So believe it or not, my master's thesis was in AI, semantic search using AI. And I used Lisp and Prolog in those days to build my system. So that was more than 35 years ago that I did my master's in AI.
So 35 years ago, you were doing a master's thesis on essentially AI, the topic of 2025.
That's correct.
Wow.
But then AI lost its flavor because the funding dried up because of Cold War ending between USA and USSR, and also because there was not enough compute and storage to be able to execute the neural network algorithms. So it kind of died away. And that time when I did my PhD, I went to networking and did my work in the field of networking. And then after my PhD, I joined Bell Labs and I spent a decade in Bell Labs. And that's where we learned about research and development and did some of the pioneering work in cryptocurrency, which is still being referenced today. Worked in streaming of video over the internet. That is also referenced quite a bit today. And after doing all of those things, after a hiatus of about 20 plus years, I headed Accenture Labs in India. And that's where in 2011, I started using AI for software engineering. So that was, again, coming back to AI, the second innings, if you will, to use AI in software engineering. And since then, I used AI for supply chain. I used it for a variety of things. And most recently, I was at Accenture, globally heading their systems and platforms team, where I was heading the robotics research and AI systems research in Accenture until 2024. And then I joined Rice Nexus, which is the innovation factory for Rice faculty and students.
That's quite a story and a long chain of events leading us to today. So I guess maybe from the context of today, how would you define AI? And especially how would you define AI for anyone who might be new to the topic?
Yeah, the way I'll describe AI is a technology with which we can empower computers or systems to interact with the humans, understand a human conversation, sense the environment, process all the information, and based on that, it can reason, it can think, it can act, and in the process of making decisions, it also learns in the process. So think of a smart assistant who can understand your language, who can recommend your favorite song or favorite movie, who can actually drive the car for you if needed. So essentially, AI is a mechanism to enable machines to be like humans, to learn from experiences, to do problem solving just like humans do by recognizing patterns, analyzing lots of information, and taking actions along the way.
And you mentioned reasoning in that answer. Do you see modern AI as doing what humans do when they reason.
See, in the beginning, when ChatGPT became popular, end of 2022, people got to be aware of what AI is. It was more about just question answer. There's no reasoning. And then in the later versions, which is like OpenAI came up with O1, O3 models, or DeepSeek came up with R1 and R3 models. So these are where the reasoning is happening. And the way you see the reasoning, that it can solve mathematical problems, it can do problem solving, and it can tell you exactly the steps it's taking in order to answer those questions. So there is some element of reasoning which is not as sophisticated, as complicated as humans do, but there are the elements of reasoning that's taking shape, and hopefully that will improve over the times.
Well, I can imagine that having a lot of applications to the work that people do. What do you see as the most interesting and exciting applications for this technology going on, right now that you've encountered?
Although we have been hearing about autonomous cars for a long time, but I think autonomous cars is like one of the most amazing, innovations in the field of AI. Because when you think of driving, you have to see the lanes, you have to see the traffic signals, you have to see the traffic signs, you have to look at the cars in front and translate that into your hand and feet. You have to control the steering, you have to use your feet to do the braking and acceleration. So it's a fairly complex task, and you have to be aware all the time, not to think about when there's fog, when there's rain, when there's snow. It becomes even more difficult. Now imagine a car with these cameras, super resolution cameras, which can see the lanes, which can see the traffic signals, traffic lights, interpret them in real time. And there's lidars with which they can form a three-dimensional map of the environment, so that it knows there's a building, there's a trees, there's pedestrians, you don't bump into that. And pulling all this information together and deciding in real time and controlling the steering and the brake and accelerator is amazing. And every time I go to San Francisco, I see that the Waymo self-driving cars, people are getting into cars without driver. That amazes me. That's a huge innovation in AI, which excites me. The second area where I see significant improvement is application of AI in healthcare. AI is transforming early detection of diseases like cancer. AI is by analyzing medical images, analyzing MRIs, CT scans, and you can do that much more efficiently, much more, precisely. As a result, it improves patient care. I also see AI in personalized healthcare, in the sense that with the different types of wearable devices, not only just iPhones and Fitbits, but now new types of wearables are coming up, where these are non-invasively can get the glucose count, electrolyte count, metabolites, and all that in the blood. And imagine that healthcare transforming from reactive healthcare, that we don't go to the doctors unless we feel sick. We don't go to the doctor unless we have yearly health checkup. But imagine your health is being continuously monitored. And before you even fall sick, it advises you as to when to exercise, what kind of food to eat, so that your health is always intact. And that is going to transform the healthcare. And last but not the least in healthcare is drug discovery. Drug discovery takes 10 to 15 years. And imagine what happened with COVID. If you took that time, we'll be all eliminated from the face of the earth. But look at what Moderna did, use AI to come up with mRNA-based drugs, vaccine in record time. So that would not have been possible without AI. So I see the transformation of AI in the field of healthcare. And the one last comment I'd like to make is in entertainment industry, we always used to think that composing music, creating art, those are higher level things only humans can do. But today with AI, the way the music is being composed, the way the art is being delivered, that is mind-boggling. And I won't be surprised if AI is creating a full movie end to end in the entertainment industry. So those are type of things which actually excite me, and I can see that how that's going to transform our lives going forward. And since I talked about AI in the context of healthcare, there is a nice video that I got with me where I show that how AI is used to convert CT scans into three-dimensional objects of your mouth, and how a dentist can perform the operations in a virtual world even before he or she does the operation in the real world. So there's a nice video of a company called ClaraSim. This is a startup which is based out of Rice.
Do we have that video to show?
Yes, I can share that with you now.
Hi, this is Kunal Shah, CEO and co-founder of ClaraSim. We found that the way that medical professionals like surgeons and dentists interact with their imaging, patient imaging, is pretty limited. And these limitations can directly lead to lower efficiencies, worse patient care, higher risks, and lower revenue. And so I want to talk to you today about how we're using AI to overcome some of these limitations. And the core of what we're doing is essentially that we're taking medical imaging that looks something like this and converting it into a virtual model that looks something like this. And what I can actually do is I can actually control a virtual drill and start to operate on this patient and see what those interactions are going to be in real time. Now, there's parts of this that rely heavily on AI, and there's parts that aren't. And I want to kind of walk through both. And so one of the key things here to see is that the critical structures that a surgeon has to identify in this patient's scan are actually highlighted in different colors, meaning the computer knows what they are and the computer knows how they behave. So when I was drilling into this bone, right, I was feeling a force feedback, I was hearing a sound, and the model was updating based on those interactions. And the nature of those interactions change based on whether you're dealing with bone, whether you're dealing with soft tissue, or various structures. And so the computer has to know how, the computer has to know which parts of the scan belong to which procedures. That's where AI comes in. So to make this model, we basically took this same tool the same scan, that you saw earlier, loaded it into our system. And what I'll do is I want the computer to understand which voxels or volumetric pixels in this scan belong to each of these critical structures. And so I'll hit segment here. And what we built is we built this machine learning model that will operate in the background. And it's been trained on real patient data that's been annotated by surgeons that have identified these structures based on their expertise. And so it can take any system like you just saw and turn that scan into something that looks like this, where it's actually identified as we scroll through the CT, which voxels in the CT belong to which structure. And based off of that, based on the density, the bone density we read from the CT, other imaging characteristics that can be identified from the imaging, and just our couple hundred years of scientific knowledge that's been built up, we understand how these structures behave, and we can turn that into an interactive model like this. With something like this, a surgeon or a dentist can better plan their procedure, reduce their risk, improve their efficiency, and bring in more revenue to their practice. And once again, we're ClaraSim. Thanks so much.
That's remarkable. And it's an application I had no idea was happening right now. So, I mean, we've seen that application. You've also mentioned several other applications in automated cars and other things. Where do you see, and nobody has a perfect crystal ball, but where do you see this kind of technology moving into the next several years? And what industries do you foresee will be most impacted by the progress in AI?
So let me just give an idea of how the evolution is happening. You know, when you talk about ChatGPT, those are based on what is called large language models, which can process languages and predict the next word, and recursively that can predict the next sentence, and that can predict the next paragraph, that can predict the next article, that can write the entire book. So that's the language model. Now, other than that, there's large visual models which can interpret images and videos, and that opens up a whole slew of operations. Then there's multimodal models where you take language, you can take camera images and videos, and also auditory signals and speech, and create a holistic view and be able to answer questions based on this context, which is multimodal. And taking it to the next level is called large action models. That is where we are taking the digital AI to the physical AI. What I mean by large action model is how do you translate the insight that you get into an action? And what I mean by action is a robot. Is it going to pick up? Is it going to grasp? Is it going to move? What action is going to take next? Think of that just like you're completing a sentence what is the next word? In this case, what is the next action the robot will be taking? So that's like a physical AI. And I won't be surprised if in the next few years, you have like humanoid robots helping you do your dishes or laundry and things like that, which all of us want to get done. And also in the hospitals, helping the doctors and nurses working alongside them. So that's another thing that is happening in AI, and see more of that happening. And since you brought up reasoning is the next thing which is going to evolve over time. We just have the early versions of reasoning. We can solve mathematical problems, but many of the reasonings are much more complicated. And this evolution of reasoning and thinking, that is also evolving in AI. And another thing which is taking shape big time is multi-agent AI. And what I mean by multi-agent AI is ChatGPT is about asking a question, is sort of querying. But most of the things that we humans do are much more complicated. Let me give an example. Let's say you want to organize a birthday party. So birthday party means that you have to create an invitation, you have to invite people, you have to get the decorations, you have to get a cake, you have to get some food. You have to do the lot of things. It's not just one thing at a time.
It's context.
Is context and also many different things. So with multi-agent, what will happen is one agent will be in terms of objective would be to do invitation. Another agent will be to do ordering cake. Another will be doing decorations. So many agents will be doing a variety of things, and eventually there will be a coordinator who will coordinate the activities to get a complex task done. And that is happening as we speak, and that is very powerful. And imagine taking that, multi-agent thing from the digital world to the physical world. What I mean by that, you could actually imagine a swarm of robots that you can send to a disaster area and do disaster recovery, rescue people from that area where humans don't want to go. Imagine a swarm of robots going, and each one of them is an agent doing separate tasks. Somebody is excavating, somebody is rescuing people, somebody is putting out the fire, and you can deal with the entire emergency situation by using these robots. So all of those things are happening as we speak, and we'll see more of that happening. And many people will talk about AGI, which is the artificial general intelligence, which is like the computers becoming more like humans, being able to reason like humans, act like humans, indistinguishable from humans. But depending on who you speak to, some people think it's a couple of years away, some people think it's a decade away. And then some people talk about artificial super intelligence, which is even beyond the humans. But I don't want to go into those esoteric areas of AGI and ASI. But even those things in terms of reasoning, multi-agent, digital to physical AI, those are the areas where you see significant progress and new products and new services in the market.
So just a brief follow-up on the idea of AGI. Do you see that the work that's currently being done on these different, more specific AIs is part of the pathway to some general intelligence? Or is that unclear?
Well, this is unclear. And again, as I said, that if you speak to some of the people, some of the experts, they will say, yes, this is leading to AGI. But if you talk to someone like Ian LeCun, who heads the AI for Meta, he will say the LLMs have limitations. They can never lead to AGI. There's a different way of thinking. Different innovations have to happen in order to achieve AGI. So short answer to your question is people differ in their opinion. It remains to be seen how things pan out.
Very interesting. Well, part of the reason we're here is because our students, like college students around the country and the world, are grappling with these technologies, how to understand and apply them to their disciplines, such as human resources, finance, supply chain management, and the many others that I could name. What do you see as the common uses currently for AI, and where are we headed in the application of AI to business contexts?
It's a good question. And in fact, people always think that AI will be applicable in esoteric areas like self-driving cars. But what is interesting is AI will be applicable in all the business functions that you can think of, and the effect will be profound. It will improve, it will enhance efficiency, it will improve operations, and it will create user experience. Let me give you some examples since you mentioned like human resources. With AI, one of the biggest things that AI is enabling human resources is to screen resumes. You get thousands of resumes. How do you screen the resumes? How do you create a profile of the candidate? How do you predict if this candidate, if hired, will be successful? All those things are being done by AI. Even in terms of retention, when I was in Accenture, we had to, as a manager, we had to find out the people who are at risk of leaving the company. Now with AI and sentiment analysis, you could identify the people who might leave the company and work to retention. So HR is going to have significant transformation. Supply chain is again is poised for big transformation because supply chain is driven by demand forecast. And with AI, demand forecasting will become much more precise and much more efficient than anything ever before. It will improve the inventory optimization. How much inventory to keep, how much buffer stock to keep so that it never runs into stock out. But at the same time, you don't want to hold so much inventory that you pay a significant amount of holding cost. It will optimize those. In terms of route optimization and distribution, there'll be optimization that AI will come in. So AI will, even in terms of supplier risk, all those things will be taken care of by AI in the context of supply chain. And if I talk about marketing, in marketing, you have analysts who will do the market research to find out how the market is. Now with AI, you can do market research very efficiently. Segmentation is the big thing in marketing. Now with AI, you can do a segmentation of one. You can individually exactly understand what a particular customer needs and tune your messages, tune your products to that particular person. So it's a transformation that we see across the board, regardless of the business function you pursue. Even in finance, if you will, automatic bookkeeping, fraud detection, risk management, all these areas will be touched by AI. So regardless of the discipline that you are in, regardless of the business function you're pursuing, AI will transform the business function in dramatic ways never thought of before.
That's interesting. So in marketing, for example, instead of creating one campaign that you hope predominantly speaks to an audience, you can create infinitely many, not infinitely, but many different campaigns.
Personalized campaigns
that are personalized to individual personality types or in backgrounds or anything like that, and be more effective. Or supply chain, instead of having one reorder point system for a category of items, you might have individualized reorder systems for individual items that are maintained automatically and independently.
Absolutely right. So because of all this information, AI is helping making system much more efficient in the way you do things, and operational improvement is happening, and personalized experience. The experience will be individualized based on what you like, what you prefer, how you want to interact. AI can tailor the system to deliver just that.
I think all of us who have studied these fields can understand immediately how that could be beneficial to the operation. I think it's important then to transition to the more existential questions. We are training ourselves to be mindful business people. What is the human place in all this? Eventually, I think we can all extrapolate these tools to the next step and perhaps the step after, and imagine how that might impact our world. What do you see happening to jobs in these fields under this AI future that we're seeing?
It's a very good question. And in fact, most of the people are worried that the rate at which things are being automated, that people will lose their jobs. That is a valid concern. But again, the impact of AI will be more in augmenting human capability, more in fostering innovation, more in creating new types of jobs. Let me try to give an example that with AI, what will happen is, all the routine tasks will be automated. So if I think about what I do on a day-to-day basis, I'll say about 60 to 70% of tasks that I do is very routine. So if that is automated, then I gain another 60 to 70% of my time that will help me to be much more innovative, much more creative. So AI will not only make you more efficient, but also make you more creative. The other thing that I see is when I've been working with oil and gas industry, energy industry, and others, people are worried that the people with a lot of experience, they're going to retire, and the young people don't have that experience, so they will lose the wealth of knowledge. And people take 20 to 30 years to gain that experience. Now, with AI will expedite that process. You could be a fresh employee at a corporation, and within a few months, you have the same amount of expertise as somebody who acquires that expertise in 20, 30 years. That's how your intelligence, your knowledge is augmented by AI. And that's a very powerful thing that AI will enable you to do. And so, of course, there is a chance of displacement. But again, although some of the routine tasks will be displaced, but it will create new opportunities, new types of jobs at the intersection of domain and AI. And if you're an energy expert, if you're a healthcare expert, you're a space expert, then your expertise together with AI, that will create new jobs that don't exist today. So there will be no more new opportunities, new growth. And of course, some jobs will be displaced, but I believe that opportunity is far beyond the amount of jobs that will get displaced.
So just to follow up on that, historically, if I can look back to technology innovations, I'll take the spreadsheet as an example, or the tractor prior to that by many decades. In both those cases, they functioned as force multipliers.
Yep.
A spreadsheet would allow one accountant to perhaps do the work of what 20 accountants could do before, or a tractor allowed one farmer to plow as many fields as 50 people prior to having the tractor. Do you see AI, and especially AI where it's headed, maybe not where it is now, as predominantly a force multiplier in the sense that spreadsheets and tractors were, or is AI potentially categorically different from those tools? And what do you see about that question?
It's just a very, very well-positioned question. And I agree with you that it's a force multiplier by big time.
Mm-hmm.
That is, as I was saying, that all the routine tasks will be automated. So think of writing emails, making phone calls, and all these things, they'll be all automated. You have time to think. So in some sense, it's a force multiplier, which is equivalent to a spreadsheet or tractors. But it's more than that, because of these, automating of the routine task, there'll be more time to think and be creative. Every person will have more chance to do things that they're passionate about, and that will lead to new innovations and disruptions, and that will take the society much further away, not just from force multiplier point of view, but from new innovations, new collaboration, new avenues, which will be open because of AI.
So given all that, how would you characterize any ethical concerns you might have around AI? What does that picture look like?
That's, again, a very good question, because ethical questions surround a few things. For example, there'll be bias and fairness. So many of the decisions which are made by AI, there's some models which actually take lots of inputs, and based on that, they predict. What do they predict? Well, should I give you a loan or should I not give you a loan? Mm-hmm. What is your credit score? Is it 600 or is it 750? Or, especially there is a system called Compass, which was used by US judiciary to decide whether a criminal who is in the jail, whether he or she is more likely to repeat that problem. And it so happened that it predicted the blacks twice as more likely to repeat the same problem as opposed to whites. And that is because the model with which it was trained, and the data was skewed. And if you train the model to skewed data, it will give you wrong interpretation, wrong judgment, and that will lead to bias. And the bias, when it applies to legal, when it applies to high-stakes things like healthcare, when it applies to hiring, again, since I talk about hiring, Amazon used an AI tool to recruit their technical people. And it so happened they were biased against women. So when it came to technical jobs, they preferred men to women. So then they realized that because the model is trained with biased data, they scrapped that tool when they found out that was happening. Similarly with healthcare, see what happened in healthcare is they were using AI models to decide whether somebody should be recommended for follow-on treatment. And it so happened that more like blacks were less likely to be recommended for follow-on treatment compared to whites, even though they were more at risk because the model were biased. And so this bias and fairness is an ethical issue that should be thought through carefully. The model should be trained with more fair data, more representative data, so that these biases go away. So that's one of the ethical concerns that is there. The second problem that I see with AI is explainability. See, what happens is the models are huge. You throw in lots of input data. They have trillions of parameters, and then they spew out some result. Now, when they spew out the result, it doesn't actually explain how it came to that result. And most of the time, especially the engineers and scientists, they don't believe a black box giving results. They want rational, they want explainability. Right. That's why the NASA space scientists, they say, well, you give me explanation. Engineers, oil and gas engineers, give me explanation. They're PhDs, they understand engineering, they understand science, but if you just give me something, I don't believe it. Give me rational, give me justified. Mm-hmm. More importantly, it becomes more relevant when the government uses those to take decisions which could impact human lives. Without transparency, without explainability, that becomes an issue. So you see that there are implications of AI. And the last point, probably I should just mention that because this is also very important, is we have been hearing about deep fakes. Now you can put anybody's face, you can put anybody's voice on anything that you want to say. Now, how would you know that this is real or it's a fake? And that can have a societal impact. And the surveillance, also another thing is surveillance, that you could, the system could do surveillance, can profile you. And those are some of the serious implications of AI that should be thought through more carefully.
That's fascinating. I mean, a lot of what you said boils down to the fundamental inscrutability of what AI is doing underneath the hood. And it has implications for those mission critical things that you mentioned, driving a car, making decisions about someone's life. That's fascinating. I think someone in our audience in business who's thinking about getting into AI or using AI in their work needs to factor those in. Assuming there are some of those students in the audience, how would you recommend they get involved in AI? What skills and knowledge should they seek in order to become part of the community that you're in?
The first thing I'll say that in 1 to 5 years, every business will be an AI business. So it's not an option that whether I want to get into AI or not. If you don't get into AI, you just don't find a job because all jobs will be AI enabled. And there are things that are doable that you could use as a stepping stones to get into this field of AI. And I'll say that these are a few things, maybe fundamentals of mathematics and statistics, understanding basics of linear algebra, calculus, probability and statistics, because you do uncertainty modeling and things like that in AI quite a bit. Then there is programming and software systems that you should know of, that at least you should know Python, at least you should know the NumPy, Panda, Matplotlib, and all these things which come with Python to do programming, and how to do version control, Git, and other things. Those are the programming practices you should know. You should take a course in machine learning and deep learning. So what is supervised versus unsupervised learning? What is regression, classification, clustering, and some of those fundamentals of machine learning. And then comes the deep learning, especially the things with the convolutional neural network, which does vision processing, or recurrent neural networks. So all these types of deep neural networks that need to understand that. And then comes the hands-on. You have to be hands-on, trying some of the frameworks, trying some coding. And this is fairly simple these days. You should do Jupyter Notebook or Collabs and things like that, with which you can start building your skills and experimenting with that. And most importantly, I think that while you get into AI, you should understand the ethical implications. You should know that how to train the models and how not to train the models, what data to use, what data not to use. So you understand that. And other thing I'd like to say is previously, during our time, the transition on jobs took place after decades. Today, things are moving so fast that you have to be always on your toes, always be aware of what's happening, always keep up to date because things will change rapidly. So networking, connecting with people, be aware, be on top of things, those are things which are necessary. Those are the core competencies that you need, regardless of whether you are in academia or industry, whether you want to do research, whether you want to do product development, or whether you want to apply AI to solve real world problems. In all of those areas, these core competencies are a fundamental stepping stone.
What do you foresee as the biggest challenges facing AI in the next few years? And what role do you think governments should play in all of this?
So I think, as I told you about the implications of AI, like I talked about bias and fairness, I talked about exploitability. So I think the government has a big role to play, and the government should collaborate with the technologists, the policymakers, and the social and the communities, so that they can understand, they can create more holistic guidelines, holistic standards that benefit society. At the same time, they are ethical in the decision making. Government should set the training, the guidelines, as I said, and the standards for how AI should be used. I don't believe in putting reins on the technology. I should believe in putting reins on the usage. For example, you have nuclear tests. You could have nuclear bombs, which will be disastrous, but at the same time, you could use it for creating nuclear power. So similarly, for many of these techniques, technologies, you could use it for harm, you could use it for good. So technology, you should not put a rein on the technology, but you should put a rein and guardrails against how you should use it. And second, I think that government has to foster public trust, that if government is using AI to make decisions, especially high stakeholder decisions for lending, law and order, hiring, they should have very transparent mechanism to say that how the decisions are being made. And there should be third party who should audit these things to make sure that these are on mark, these are beneficial to the people, and these are clear how the decisions are taken. And last but not the least, I think the government has to be ready for supporting the job displacement, because many of the jobs will be displaced because of automation, and government should be there to retrain these people so that they can take on different types of jobs as opposed to the jobs they have been doing, which are eliminated.
Well, it sounds like there are many policy-related questions
Yes.
that need to be settled at the state, local, and of course federal levels. But not only that, because these are worldwide issues.
Yeah.
And I don't know that there's any particular worldwide body already set up to handle this at a government point of view. How would you suggest our audience, particularly those who may go on to start their own businesses or become officers in companies that do work that uses this technology, promotes, or even develops this technology, how would you want or envision them to get involved in this kind of oversight policy and kind of guidance issue?
So you had two questions. First question, you mentioned about worldwide policies. In fact, what is happening is it's not worldwide, but EU has come up with the AI Act. It actually says what is permitted, what is not permitted, which is really harmful, which is prohibited. And they can categorize the type of things they're doing into these buckets. And depending on which bucket you fall in, the bucket of sincerity, the bucket of severity, the fines that are levied are enormous. So EU has come up with this act, but again, US is more relaxed in the sense that it's allowing people to innovate, because US believes that if you stifle innovation, that's not the right way to go, but you should actually put guardrails on usage. I think the government is trying to come up with guardrails on the usage as well. And I don't know whether there'll be a single body across the globe, but each region will definitely have their own policies based on their appetite, based on their thought processes as to how this should be handled. And for those who want to get into these kind of policy making and others, I think there's the opportunity, whether you're a technologist, whether you are a policymaker, you have opportunities to get involved through various bodies which are taking the decisions, coming up with setting up the guardrails, setting up with the standards and all this. That's where you can get involved. They can contribute from multiple angles, regardless of your background, regardless of where you come from. You will be able to contribute there.
Okay. Well, I know we want to get to questions, but before we do, can you tell us just a little bit more about the work that you do with Rice Nexus at the Houston Ion and the organization you founded?
Okay, so I represent Rice Nexus. So Rice Nexus is an innovation factory for Rice faculty, students, and alums. So they can launch their own company, they can interact, they can partner with corporations, and they can accelerate the adoption of AI. So in Rice Nexus, I have 3 mandates. One is it's an incubator for Rice technologies. The faculty, they come up with great ideas, they write papers, and sometimes they leave it and move on to the next thing. But my job, along with the Office of Innovation, is to take those innovations and try to commercialize them, help them launch as a company the best we can. So that's a complete factory of innovation that we want to enable for Rice faculty, students, and alum. And we have an office in Ion Building where we have 12 startups already. We have 3 venture capitals who are located in the same space. We are trying to cross-pollinate. And we are also announcing today a partnership with Google to do something called AI Accelerator. I think, I don't know if they have already published the blog, but this is something we are launching from Rice Nexus together with Google, an AI Accelerator, where we'll bring in 10 corporates across the industries, 10 startups, and basically try to solve the problem, industry problems using the startups technologies in a very comprehensive way, in a way that they can scale, in a way they are responsible, and that's another thing that I've been doing at Rice. And other than Rice, since you mentioned what I founded, I co-founded something called Houston AI, and Houston AI is a nonprofit. And this is the objective, the 3-fold objectives. First objective is to establish Houston as a powerhouse of AI. It should not be when people think of AI, just think of Silicon Valley. People should think of Houston because we have all the intellect, all the academicians in University of Houston, Texas A&M, Rice, and the entire university system. We have industry experts in energy, in health, in space. Nowhere in the world you can match that. And you have entrepreneurs. Bring them, provide a platform so they can exchange ideas and push the envelope of AI. The second thing, we want to upskill the Houston workforce. Again, as I said, that 1 to 5 years, every business will be an AI business. They need AI literate workforce. So we want to create an environment of training, bringing the educational institutions, bringing the tutoring and organizing workshops, hackathons, and boot camps so that people get used to applying AI, so that you, regardless of your background, regardless of your training, you should be able to take advantage of the limitless opportunities that AI provides, so that economic standards improve, people a better quality of life. And third thing that Houston AI is trying to do is catalyze the creation of startups at the intersection of domain and AI. Because no place on planet has the same amount of domain knowledge as Houston in energy, in health, and in space. And together with AI, I think there's opportunity to create unicorn startups at the intersection that can redefine that industries. And I think, and once you do the startups, then we want to partner with government and other investors to convert the startups into thriving businesses, which create more economic opportunity for people in Houston.
So you're acting almost as an incubator within an incubator for these kinds of works.
That's correct. So this is like a more of a nonprofit with some of my co-founders from outside of Rice in different fields.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, I hope everyone looks that up. I think we need to move on to our questions from our audience. I hope that we have a good bunch of questions already set up. James, do you want to take over?
So for anyone who has questions, feel free to either unmute and you can ask out loud, or probably the easiest way to do it is if you use the chat box. So if you have questions for Dr. Paul, let's go ahead and drop those in the chat box right now. We do have a few minutes to answer those. And again, if you would like to unmute, you can unmute and ask out loud.
While we're waiting for people perhaps to type questions or summon the courage to unmute and ask, I'll go ahead and ask one that occurred to me while you're talking, and that is, you gave us a good breakdown of how someone might get involved in the work that you do and the background and knowledge and skills that they would need. Most of our audience probably is never going to pursue that level of technical depth in AI, but they're still nevertheless going to need knowledge worker level abilities in AI, as you've said, to be successful.
Yeah.
Do you have any recommendations right off the bat of how someone who's just dipping a toe into AI and may need to be proficient in it as a user in their careers, how you would recommend them to immerse themselves in it so that they become an effective AI worker?
I'd say that just start playing with ChatGPT if you have not done before. Use ChatGPT to write emails for you, summarize things for you. As you start playing, you realize, man, this is actually giving me power. It's making me much more effective in many things that I do. And second of all, depending on your business function, if you're a finance guy, or if you're a marketing person, or if you're a salesperson, there are a lot of open source tools which are powered by AI. Just look it up, just play with it. Again, I say that you are not developing the technology, you're just playing with it just to see, how powerful it is. And once you see that what these tools can do, you can start thinking, improvising, hey, why don't I use this tool to do that thing? Why don't I use this tool to do that? Why can't I use the tool to generate PowerPoint slides for me? Why don't I use these tools to, generate financial insights from income statements, balance sheets, and cash flow statements and things like that. So depending on your role, the tools there which actually will allow you to do things which you never thought would be possible. Especially the market research. Today you have to go and search and Google for things. Use ChatGPT, use these tools to see that how powerful they are in terms of doing market research for you. Even if you're a professor, you want to see what papers exist and what kind of things are happening in the field, you could use and start getting a feel for the power of the AI. And you start, customizing it for your own needs. That's what I'll say.
That's great. That's a very fun answer because it boiled down to use your free resources available to you and play.
Just play and get a sense of it.
Yeah.
And then you know how to use it for your own benefit.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's a great pivot into one of the questions. So there's a two-part question, and I think you just touched on some of it. But one of them is having a risk management governance background. How can I learn AI to be more marketable, and are there certifications required for employment? The second part they asked about, are there any free resources available?
Yeah, this is an evolving field. I think that people are realizing the importance of governance, and I know that at RISE there's a Bacon Institute. They're doing some of these invited talks, and they are trying to offer some of the courses for governance. And I'm not sure if they're offering certificates, but I think that it's just a matter of time that people start offering certificates for people who understand what are the various factors which are involved in governance, involved in setting the standards and guidelines for AI. But I'm saying that based on my experience in RISE, the Bacon Institute, which is more a policymaker institute, and they are working at the intersection of AI and policy. I know the faculty who are actually trying to see ethics in AI and coming up with guidance, but I'm sure that there are things that are happening. But in terms of certification, it doesn't come right at top of my head, but I can look it up. You can look it up yourself too. But I think this is happening, and you should be able to leverage your skills on that front.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And then Dr. Verma, you had a question?
Yeah, Dr. Paul, thank you very much for the insights. I teach finance courses here, so my question is on the finance side. And you touched a lot of areas where it can disrupt in the financial industry, especially loans and cash flows and all. My question is mainly on the investing side. So as we all know, investment is a zero-sum game. For someone to win, there someone has to lose. So everyone cannot get better off with all the AI tools. So do you think moving on, it will create more of a level playing field among investors, or it will be more concentrated towards the advantage will be more towards the large investors and the deck will be more against us, like retail investors mainly. So what do you think will happen in the future as far as the investing is concerned? Because
You
two
know,
humans are involved, because the two humans are involved. Right now, AI is dealing with something else, which is non-human entity.
if I had the right answer, then I'll be just investing. I'll just give up my job just investing. But to your point, yes, what will happen is the level field will go up because everybody will start using AI. So once everybody starts using AI, just the playing field just gets elevated. But then what happens is then people will come up with customized models. People will come up with very large models and the things where people will come up with creativity to see if they can get an edge, little edge with which they can beat you in terms of doing their transactions in real time, can do better risk management, better market fluctuation, estimating that, and take the next action in sub-second time well before others do it. So I think it's not that it's a slam dunk for anybody with the investment field, but it's increasing increasing the stakes up, and then still there will be opportunities for people to come up with innovations, to come up with models which will give them a leg up.
Yeah. Thank you.
So as a result, the institutions will always have a leg up on retail investors because they have more resources, more investments to be put into how AI can be leveraged, customized to their needs.
Yeah, that makes a better case of individuals to hold S&P 500 index. That's it. Probably.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, and we have another question in the chat. Can you please speak about how AI could play a role in the development of telecommunications industry?
Telecommunications is something that I've been doing for a long time, and the way the AI will play in telecommunications, there are a few things that I can think of. One of the things that I can think of is telecommunications as it applies in the context of space and deep space and others, where the round trip delay becomes significantly high. What AI can do is AI can be intelligent in terms of what information can be cached, what information can be leveraged from the edge to reduce the latency of communication and make communication much more effective. I can think of AI to be also maybe to select the frequencies of we did something called software defined networking, where you try to define what frequencies to use for communications, and maybe with AI there'll be a better knowledge, a better way of choosing the spectrum that will be used for communication. And again, I'm conjecturing those, but I can see the first part, which is more like applying AI to decide what should be cached to reduce latency. That is already happening in the part of what is called edge AI, and I see that happening in the context of deep space communications.
All right, and maybe time for one more question. How significant was Dr. Zadea's fuzzy logic in development of AI?
No, fuzzy logic is still being used in some sense, but fuzzy logic is used to do more of a denoising. Now, I'll just give an example that I'm involved with a startup at Rice, which is analyzing phonocardiogram signals. So this is signals from the heart that is captured by stethoscope. Now the digital stethoscope capture that heart sounds, and then you try to analyze that heart sound to predict potential cardiovascular diseases. But this heart sound, if it's not captured in complete silence, there'll be a lot of ambient noise. And now how do you denoise that signal so that you get the better signal. That's where we are trying to use a fuzzy logic to see that if I can use fuzzy logic to do denoising to make the signals better. And also fuzzy logic, to some extent, we're trying to see if it can help in decision making, especially when, there is a trade-off between false positive and false negative. And in medical parlance, it's called sensitivity and specificity. And we are trying to see if fuzzy logic can be used to improve sensitivity while keeping specificity also very high. So we are trying to use fuzzy logic in some sense as a differentiator on top of AI in two ways. One is to denoise signals, and second is to use as a differentiator on top of AI models to see if we can get additional benefits out of it.
Thank you so much. And I think that just about does it for our time. We're right up against our 1 hour time frame. So a couple things as we close it out. Number one, I want to thank Dr. Davis and Dr. Paul for joining us today. This is a really informative session that I think is going to generate a lot of interest amongst our student population. So thank you both for joining us today. And I do want to say, before we all log off, I'm dropping in the chat box just a quick survey. We want to know what you thought about today's session, but we also want to know what other sessions can we provide? What additional information can we share with students to get more information from you all? So if you would just it'll be a minute to answer that survey and share that information with us. But again, Dr. Paul, Dr. Davis, thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to doing more of these sessions here in the near future. But again, just a big thank you to you both. This was really great.
Well, thank you to James Finaro and your team for helping to put this on. Dr. Paul, thank you for being here with us. I really appreciate your insights. I know our students and faculty and staff do as well.
Thank you, Dr. Davis, for inviting me here. Thank you, James, for all the support, technical support, and making it happen in real time. That's always a challenge. And it went smoothly, and thank you so much. And Gennaro, I'd like to thank you for giving me the opportunity to come here. And students and whoever were on the call, I appreciate your time. That you could have used the time for anything else, but you were on this podcast, on this interview. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.